everyone, welcome back to another time lapse. This one was pretty fun. It was a suggestion made by the comments. A fall-themed gardener of some sorts, maybe an old man, maybe from a wealthy family. I wanted to try to combine the themes of my last week's fall-themed character. She's the main character, so I thought maybe this could be her grandfather of sorts, and she's going on an adventure, and he's younger, he's older. But he has a young spirit at heart, and maybe he's a retired adventurer of some sorts. So I wanted to give him a very... You could see him being some sort of adventure without being. I wanted his eyes to be smaller than hers to show his age. You can see here I try to make them big and see, okay, that 3x3 eye size that I attempted to do beforehand doesn't work. So maybe we can do a 1x3 instead. I'm trying to see about maybe giving him outlines to his eyes to make them more fierce for that more seasoned look, but I go back on it and I'm just trying to tweak and determine the overall eye type. Trying different ideas here, and I'm also looking at a lot of references of just Butler types or old man, and I'm seeing a lot of facial hair, a lot of gray hair. I give him very big bushy eyebrows, and I thought, okay, can I exaggerate his nose? No? Okay. How about some glasses? And I go back in and change the color of the glasses, but I use these for now. Trying to see and play around with the nose, play around with the glasses. Just overall trying to figure out what he could look like and how could I tweak it a little bit. I try and remove the fierceness of the outline, the really black color you see, and I remove it because I didn't end up liking it. I went for a more shaded look, as if his eyebrows are tucked in or sunken in. Here I'm trying to figure out the shading of his beard, and you can see I have some trouble with it. I definitely need to do a study on fur or just hair overall. I've tried hair, but this is a little bit different in the fact that it's a beard, and beards aren't fur textured, but there's a certain way it looks compared to regular hair, or at least I think so. I don't usually draw beards, so this was a fun attempt at something new. You can see here I'm trying to figure out shading, and I'm trying to carve in shapes. I'm zooming in and out, trying to check and double check to see what can I change, what can I tweak. The beard part itself, tricky, and I'm just going in and trying different ways, and I attempt to do a mustache outline initially, and then at the bottom of his beard where you add more shadow, and I think this helps. I don't know how, but I think making that sort of feel of just beard or mustache into beard helped, and liking it, I keep it, and I keep going on. You can see as well I add in the back part of his ear to show just definition, and then after that I try to tweak his eyes a little bit more. Here's where that outline comes into play with making his eyes look sunken in as if they're underneath his eyebrows, and then I add the glasses. I wanted to keep fall theme, so I went with more reddish autumn feeling glasses. From there it's a matter of figuring out his body size. Here I try to give him hair on top of his head, and I think I like it. It's just a matter of seeing how I can shape it, so to speak, as in lots of hair on top. No, I didn't like the way his body outlined, or his head outlined. I tried giving him a mouth on his beard, didn't like the way that looked, so I removed it. Just kept it without. Once I figure out the top of the head and just the overall head feel, I move on to his body, and this was tricky. I've only drawn a male before once, and I wanted to try to do a little bit of justice since my last drawing. He is a butler of sorts. He has a very formal wear. I've done something similar to this before with a tailcoat. I wanted him to look fancy and proper, but at the same time look like if he pulled out a sword, it wouldn't be surprising. He's just that type of old, wise type of guy. Would that be how you say it? I'm trying to shade in a suit, shade in some sort of feel. I ran into the issue of a lot of the references I was looking at. The suit was white and black, but the issue is his beard is white. So I would have to figure out a way to combine or separate what his beard is and what his suit is. So instead, I went with a red, like his glasses, for a kind of sweater. Some sort of sweater he's wearing underneath his clothing instead to help and attempt to separate both of them. And I think it did help. I'm just trying to figure out blobs and shapes, as I think That's what it feels like it comes down to. A lot of the times, if it just looks convincing, good enough. It's what it seems to be. I'm trying to get better at not worrying too much over the detail. I definitely think overall this could have been better if I spent more time on it. But for what I was able to accomplish, I'm happy with it. And I definitely would like to give this guy another try sometime. Here, I'm just trying to figure out how big his body needs to be and how big his shoulders need to be to feel right. I'm trying to take into consideration just the sprite size itself, his legs, his arms, and I want his arms to go behind him to feel a more proper feel to it. Lots of feel here. I'm thinking about that tailcoat I mentioned earlier, and I didn't like the way that it was pointy, so I changed it. What I did mostly here was just trying to figure out the overall ratio. Where do his arms go? Where do his hips go? Where does the tailcoat go? Where do his legs go? Trying to figure out that scale and ratio size. Well, you can get away with it depending on how you do it. For example, a chibi is about, I think, 3 head ratio, 3.5, sometimes 2 head ratio. And especially when you're dealing with something more cartoonish, ratios with proportions, you can get away with it if you know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm attempting. And one thing I always like to keep in mind is that the torso to the feet are equal to the head to the pelvis. Yes, I think so. If you were to chop his body in half from pelvis, it should about equal that way. And here I'm trying to test and see about the shoulders. Do they need to be that wide? Can I make them narrow? They do need to be that wide. Let me put them back to that size. It's just a matter of testing and tweaking things, and I think this is always my favorite part. I'm trying an attempt at new, what would you call it, shading? Trying to see, okay, if his arms are going behind him, maybe I can add this shading here to show off the fact that it's going behind. Maybe less shading, more shading. Not only do I have to keep in mind distance and adding shading in that regard, but also shading in terms of just ruffles and wrinkles when it comes to clothing. I'm definitely trying to get better at clothing, and it's one of the reasons I keep doing these Monday character drawings, or not Monday in this case, but just character drawings. I want to try to get better at clothing, faces, expressions, all of those things. This is a good exercise, and I try not to stress too much about it, as this is just supposed to be fun, and I definitely had a lot of fun doing this. I'm trying my best to think about a silhouette. You can kind of see here, at least when I think about the male frame, there's this sort of, and maybe I can draw it somewhere up top, but there's this sort of shape you do for the chest, then there's a shape you do for the pelvis, and I'm trying to keep that idea in mind. I'm trying to imagine what his skeleton might look like underneath, and again, because it's pixel art, or even if it wasn't pixel art, even if it was small-ish, you don't have to worry too much about anatomy if you know anatomy. I know a little bit, not too much. And here, what I'm doing is trying to make sure the contrast of the colors is right. I'm taking into consideration the colors and the background colors. You can see here, it initially was black, but I didn't want black. I want a more softer tone, especially since I like to do darker outlines. So I tried to make his clothing warmer as well because it is fall themed. So I gave him more of a reddish hue to his dark colors and his dark tones. I'm just going in and making sure the contrast is well. It looks like if it didn't have color, could you tell what part of his suit, what part isn't his suit, what part is his pants, what part are his shoes? I'm going back and forth and trying to figure that out, and I think I succeeded just a smidge. I'm testing around and seeing what would his beard look like if it were bigger? What would it look like if it were smaller? Maybe I can change the color, and I'm thinking here, maybe I can add that white part to a shirt if I make his hair more yellow in tone, or more of a cream color, but I didn't like it, as you can see, so I went back and I just went with a more sweater feel. I tried to give him a tie. Tie didn't work out. It didn't look like a tie. What do you think? I tried, but maybe some sort of shading could have helped it look more tie-ish, but in the end, I went with more of a striped pattern as akin to a sweater sort of feel, as I tried the white for his shirt, didn't work. Also tried the tie, didn't work. And you can see here I keep going back and trying to figure out, okay, where does the body proportions go? When, at least the way I learned it, the elbow is right at the belly button. And wherever his elbow breaks at is where his belly button is. And then from there, you can kind of figure out halfway. A lot of the stereotypes I see, at least when it comes to older characters, is big ears, big nose. And here I'm trying to figure out, okay, maybe do I make the ears bigger? But I think I make them smaller. It's not as big as they once were. I'm also giving him more hair, as one of my favorite characters is from a game Overwatch, is Reinhardt. He's a very elderly character, but he looks like he can do some damage, and he has hair, if I recall, at least when he was younger. So they want a more refined, dignified look, as if he could, if he really wanted to, like character like, per se, what was his name? Alfred from Batman, the Butler. The character that could do damage if they wanted to, they're a retired butler, a retired adventurer, just looking for a nice job to cut some grass and relax for a bit. What I'm doing here next is playing around with shading and colors. I'm trying to figure out, okay, if I were to describe his pants in only 2 colors and his shoes, how would he do it? I have to think about the inside of his body, which would most likely be shaded, the bottom of his shoes would most likely be shaded, and the crease between the shoes and the pants would maybe also be shaded. I'm trying to think here in terms of 2-color lining. I'm trying to keep my colors to a minimal while also still being super colorful. I don't know if I succeeded in it, but I do like it. I will improve on it, but for now, I give myself a passing grade. After I figure that out, I think I then move on to either outline or coloring. Let's see. I'm watching this back and coloring, but sometimes I change my mind mid-drawing and then go back and tweak things a bit. I'm changing values here and trying to see about why I don't like the orange I chose, the orange reddish tint. I didn't like it, so I went back and changed it, and it's just a matter of checking values and seeing, okay, does it pop out even if it's in black and white? And it does, so I change it and I move it. Next up, I move on to outlining him, and I think I like this outline feel, but I didn't do shaded outline this time. I just outlined him depending on what the outline was. For example, for his hair, I gave him a grayish outline. For his clothing, darker, and I just went over. I also erased the bottom part of his body in terms of outline. I'm trying to think of this more in terms of sprite, and I like the way the sprites work when the bottom of them isn't outlined compared to the rest of their body. When it's not outlined, it makes them feel more connected to the world, or at least I think so. And all I'm doing here is just going around and changing the color of the outline to something darker, so he has an outline, but it's shaded. And it's colored. If I shaded it, it would be depending on the light, so it would be a lighter gray for his hair compared to just one tone of gray, depending on where the light is. But overall, that is our used-to-be adventurer gardener character. I definitely do think he would maybe be her grandfather, tell her stories, and it made her want to go off on an adventure, maybe. What do you think? I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun making this guy, and leave comments below for maybe another fall character. I could either add it to this group of sprites that I currently have, or something else, maybe Thanksgiving related or something of the sorts. This was a lot of fun to make. 30 minutes to make him, which is surprising. But I don't know, can you tell it's 30 minutes in a bad way? Last time the girl took me 2 hours. That's a huge difference. But I had fun doing this. I'm excited for next week. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. And I hope you like the sweeping animation, or the raking animation. I didn't finish it as I couldn't figure out how to draw a rake. But I got the motions down, hopefully. But thanks for coming, and thank you to Colonel as well for being a Patreon member of mine. On there, I have time lapses of previous pixel art I've done, as well as raw files that you can download if you're curious on more of my pixel art breakdowns. And with that, so bye-bye!